natal charts. This has to be my most requested video because every time I talk about my sun sign, my moon sign, my rising sign, my Mercury sign, all the different signs, people look at me like I'm crazy. They like, I only know I'm a Gemini. I'm a Leo. But there's so much more to us and our birth chart / natal chart. There's so much more to it, right? So we're going to talk about natal charts today. I'll try to break it down and make it as simple as possible because it can be complicated. So our natal chart, which you may also see people call birth chart, are the same things. If you hear a little noise, sorry. But anyways, so our natal chart and our birth charts are the same thing. It basically tells us what the heavens look like. Y'all thought I was going to say something else, right? But no, what the heavens look like at the exact moment we were born. So we are born in a specific area, a specific time, and a specific date. And the heavens, the stars, the planets are in a certain sign. They are in a certain way at that specific area. I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I don't want to overcomplicate it. The reason why knowing our birth chart and calculating our birth chart and natal chart is important is because there's so many more parts of us. And sometimes we may think that we are a certain zodiac sign and we're not. For example, growing up, so my birthday is on March 20th, the first day of spring. It's so fitting, right? March 20th. I grew up, majority of people will probably say, oh, she's a Pisces. She's a Pisces. That is not true. I grew up my whole life, not my whole life, but my whole childhood thinking I was a Pisces because the little magazine said I was a Pisces based off of my birth date, right? And then I believed it so much, my class ring has the Pisces symbol in the middle. I calculated my birth chart based off of the time I was born, based off of the location I was born. And how about I'm an Aries. No wonder why all my childhood, I only a little bit of the Pisces, like when I was reading horoscopes, only a little bit I resonated with. But I was like, but this Aries sounds just like me. And people like, you a Pisces? Oh my gosh, you're so bossy. You like, oh my gosh, you're a Pisces? I would never thought that. The only thing that was very Pisces about me was my emotions and my intuitive side. But that's because my moon sign is in Cancer. So knowing your birth chart is important. I told you that to tell you that you have to calculate your birth chart because you may be believing one thing and that may not necessarily be true. And not only that, you may not resonate with all of the things from that one sign because that is not the only part about you. So in order to do this, you have to, you can Google natal chart, birth chart. I believe it's Astrology Cafe. I'll be sure to link it in a shows notes description thingy majiggy at the bottom, right? I'll link it there so you can calculate it. You have to know where you were born. So if you don't know where you're born, try to find out, create your birth records online, or not create them, but request your birth records or whatever to try to find out where you was born. Because, for example, with me, I was born in Miami, Florida, and I was born at night. So the sun had already switched over to Aries because technically in the magazines and stuff, Aries start on March 21st. But the location and the time I was born, the sun had already switched over to Aries. So therefore, I was born in Aries. But in another part of the world at that same time, right, may have been Pisces. Nevertheless, I don't want to confuse you. That's why I say you have to know where you were born and what time. The time is important. But if you don't know your time right now, it's okay. You can still calculate your birth chart when it comes to the area you were born in and your date. You have to know your date in the specific area, like the city and state. Not the exact address, but the city and the state. The time, you will eventually want to know your time. So if you could request your birth records, that would be perfect, because the time comes to play a part when it comes to the houses in your natal chart. But that's kind of like learning the back end. Like, you got to study all the front end stuff first to even get to the houses, because the houses could be complicated if you don't understand the front end. The front end things that I'm talking about are the planets. The planets, including the sun and the sun and the moon. When we're talking about our natal chart and birth chart, when we talk about planets, we always include the sun and the moon in it. The only planet that is not included in our natal chart is Earth, because we were born on Earth, right? You get it? Okay, good. So when you calculate your birth chart, you're going to get certain signs. You're going to get, the first one that's going to show is your sun sign. That is the main sign people refer to. When people say, oh, I'm a Gemini, I'm a Scorpio, I'm a this, I'm a that, they're referring to their sun sign. Your sun sign is over yourself and main concerns and vitality. So it's kind of like your framework. It's kind of like painting the main picture of you, right? But it's not talking about specific details. It's like your main picture, your personality per se, right? The second thing that's going to come up is your moon sign. Your moon sign is emotions, right? If you think about the moon is dealing with the feminine. The sun is dealing with the masculine. Your moon sign deals with emotions, your instincts, your habits. That is important to know, because you may say, okay, for example, perfect example, like me, which is kind of like contradiction. My sun is in Aries, which is very fiery, because we're a fire sign, right? Fire, leadership, powerful, all of those things. And then with my moon sign, side note, here I go with my rants. I always tell people like I'm a walking contradiction, like I'm very powerful and I'm very take charge, but then I'm also like very intuitive and in tune with my emotions and can be very sensitive. That did not resonate when I used to read Aries, because I'm like, these are not my feelings. I'm very intuitive. I don't know what they say. I'm lacking intuition. That's because my moon sign is in Cancer, which is water, which controls the emotions and my intuition. So this is why all of this is important. Anyways, so the moon controls your emotions, instincts, and habits. That's why I say just knowing your sun sign only gives one side of you, not all of you. And then you will have your rising. The third thing that a lot of people talk about, they know their sun, moon, and rising a lot of times. The rising sign is, I don't want to complicate it. It's basically the sign that was next in line that was rising. I believe the moon was rising in. I think, right? Is it the moon? I think. I have to get back to you on that one. But Google it. But the rising sign, your rising sign is not considered one of the planets. It's considered your rising sign. But the rising sign basically talks about your outer appearance, how people perceive you, right? So you're talking about sun, your personality, moon, your emotions, rising, how you're perceived by others. And now we're talking about the planets. So Mercury rules communication, intellect, and reason. So based off of your sign, off of the sign that Mercury, the planet, was in during the time you were born, will tell you a lot about how you communicate. It will tell you a lot about how you reason and how your intellectual levels are. The next planet is Venus. So Venus rules love, beauty, and art. Based off of what sign that planet was in tells you about your love life, tells you about beauty, tells you about your artistic side. An important thing to know is that these planets, you know what, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I explain that at the end. I'll explain that at the end so we can stick on one thing so I don't confuse you. The next planet we're going to talk about is Mars. Mars rules action, desire, and aggression. So based off of what sign Mars was in tells you a lot about your life when it comes to aggression, when it comes to the actions you take and your desires. The next planet is Jupiter. Jupiter rules expansion, optimism, and abundance. The next planet is Saturn. Saturn rules restriction, pessimism, and structure. And then Uranus rules rebellion, eccentricity, and upheaval. Neptune rules your imagination, dreams, and delusions. Pluto rules transformation, obsession, and power. And then a part of our natal charts also is our North Node and South Node, which I don't want to get into. We're just going to focus on planets right now. An important thing to note when it comes to the planets is the planets and the sun and the moon, right? These planets rule these things anyways outside of your birth chart. So for example, Mercury rules communication all the time, no matter when it comes to your birth chart, no matter what it shows up as in your birth chart. That's what Mercury rules. So why it's important in your birth chart is because Mercury was in a certain sign, just like the sun. The sun was rotating. No, the sun doesn't rotate. Scratch that. The sun was in a certain sign at the time you was born. The moon was in a certain position that caused it to be in a certain sign when you were born. Each one of these planets were in a certain sign when you were born. So being that these planets these planets rule certain things. For example, Mercury rules communication. Being that rules communication, Mercury is in a certain sign, right? Gemini, Virgo, Libra, Leo, Pisces. Mercury was in a position that was in a certain sign, which tells you about your specific time of birth, specific date, and specific area, and specific, all of that specificness, right? It tells you specifically about Mercury and your communication based off of the sign that it was in. If that makes sense. I hope I didn't confuse you. So each planet rules a certain thing. Mars, Venus, Jupiter, right? They rule certain areas of life. Anyways, we don't talk about Earth because we were here on Earth. Saturn rules restriction anyways outside of your birth chart. But based off of, say, your Saturn was in Virgo, that tells you about your restrictions in your life. It doesn't tell you about the restrictions on Saturn or anything. It tells you about the restrictions in your life because Saturn rules restrictions. And being that they are in certain signs and these planets are in certain signs at the time you are born, that tells you about your life because these planets were in certain signs when you were born, if that makes sense. I really hope this makes sense, and I hope I didn't overcomplicate it for you. So we have the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Listen, I know they have a discrepancy about Pluto, if Pluto's a planet, but now it's a dwarf planet. But it's okay because it still matters. It still matters. It matters a lot. I'm going to link a book that I use. It's called The Only Astrology Book You Will Ever Need. This is the best astrology book I have ever read. Listen, you don't need to read many books. This book breaks it down step by step, planet by planet, sign by sign. It breaks it down where you won't be confused. So if you're looking for a specific book, I'm going to link it in a show description so that you can get it. I want you to go to the link. I'm going to put it here so that you can calculate your natal chart. Hopefully you know your birth time. If not, start working on it, but read your natal chart until then. I want you to do this because it makes life makes a lot of sense. I'm telling you, your life doesn't make sense until you read your natal chart. Yes, I just said your life don't make sense unless you read your natal chart. And I'm being so serious because me learning about my natal chart helped me learn more about certain parts of myself, helped me learn how to master certain parts of myself, helped me learn to understand my wife better, helped me understand our marriage better as two individual people working, loving, and coexisting together based off of our natal charts. I'm telling you, it's like our book. Our life is in a book, okay? So I'm a big fan, a big advocate for knowing our natal chart, knowing what our planets, where our planets were positioned, what signs rule our natal chart, what signs rule us, what planets rule us. But yeah, hopefully I explained it. If you have any questions, if I confused you, if I made this easier, just drop it in the comments. If you have a question, I'll answer it. If you confused and you like Sunny, you confused me even more than I was confused, I will make another video and try to make it more simplified. But if you find out what your signs are in and you calculate your natal chart, drop them in the comments. Let's see, because we may have some signs and comments. In comments, especially if you were born around the time I was born in. Our Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. No, not Saturn. I think our Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto may be the same, because those 3 planets stay the same for a while, over a course of a couple years. But anyways, drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. It helps me move up in the YouTube world. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that red subscribe button so that you could be a part of the family. Also, share my video and my channel with others if you think they'll be interested, and hit that little bell right there, so that you can be notified when I upload new videos. And if nobody told y'all today, guess what? I love y'all.